So we're gonna continue exploring Fukanzazengi, and we're getting to the section of Fukanzazengi that most people would probably skip because it is the section of Fukanzazengi where Master Dogen gets into the specifics of how to practice Zazen. And if you've been practicing Zazen for a while, you might think, oh, I know this stuff. It seems very straightforward and simple. And yet, I think it actually is the most important part of Fukanzazengi. And one of the things that I think is really important about it is the fact that Dogen actually took some time to do his best to describe the setting and circumstances and other considerations, including how you get your body into the Zazen posture to actually do Zazen. And it's rare, I think, in texts that are sort of in the philosophical, spiritual genre to include instructions and actually how to do a practice that will be practically helpful to you in your daily life. Often there are rules and big ideas and things like that, which aren't necessarily unhelpful, but rare to have actual instructions. So we're going to take our time going through this section. We're going to do the opposite of skipping it. I'm going to take it one line at a time. And over the next couple of months, really kind of dig into what Dogen is saying and what these instructions offer to us. So the line we're going to look into today is for practicing Zen, a quiet room is suitable. For practicing Zen, a quiet room is suitable. So first of all, a quiet room. How easy or hard is that to come by? I remember this past weekend I was out taking a hike, and it's fairly early in the morning. The sun had just come up, and I was all alone, and it was probably in the mid 20s, pretty cold. And I stopped for a moment and closed my eyes, and it was really quiet. But even in that quietness, I could hear wind and birds and rustling of you know trees and leaves, and in the distance I could hear faint machine sounds. And that was a pretty quiet place. So a quiet room is suitable. Although we can do Zazen anywhere, we can practice anywhere, we can get ourselves into a Zazen posture anywhere, it's important to really take some time to consider the space that you practice in, especially the one that you use for your daily practice. In Zen monasteries, the Zendo is often a standalone building or special hall that's specifically dedicated to the practice of Zazen. So a formal Zendo is the ideal place to practice Zazen for a number of reasons. Most of us don't have access to a standalone room to practice Zazen. We could just dedicate to that. But it's helpful to think about your physical space in your home where you're going to practice Zazen and to think about that as your Zendo. The word Zendo or Zen Hall is closely linked to the word dojo, which can be translated into place of the way. In fact, a Zendo is a specific type of dojo. One thing that all dojos have in common is that they're dedicated spaces for immersive and experiential learning. Immersive and experiential learning. They're a place you go to do something, to immerse yourself in doing the thing you are studying. The Zendo is a place where you can go to immerse yourself in the experiential practice of Zazen. It's not a place to think about Zen, to read about Zen, debate about Zen, or to write about Zen. There are other places that you can do those things. So your Zendo is the physical space where you go to immerse yourself in the experiential practice of Zazen. So my first real practice space, the one I set up to be a Zendo, was in a room in the basement of the first house that my wife and I had. And I chose this space because it wasn't being used for anything at the time. I was fortunate that when we moved in, I was able to sort of have a space where I'd said, this is not going to be used for anything else but Zazen. It wasn't a big space. It was in a fairly quiet part of our house. I had a door that I could close for privacy. So I set up my zabuton and my zafu in one of the corners and had a very simple altar with a statue of the Buddha next to it. And the rest of the room was completely empty. So there was minimal distractions. So I found that quiet room to be most suitable for Zazen in that place that I lived. I was really lucky. Most of us don't have a whole room that we can just devote to Zazen practice. So the thing is, it's still really possible to create your own dedicated space for Zazen. Even a 3x3 spot on the floor of your bedroom can be a Zendo. It's useful to experiment with different places to practice in different areas. But wherever you settle, I found it's really helpful to have one dedicated place in your home that you go to every day for Zazen. So for the practice of Zen, a quiet room is suitable. Quiet rooms are hard to come by. There's some other considerations that you might want to take into account. Put your cell phone on Do Not Disturb. Leave it out of the room altogether. Maybe asking other people in your house to be mindful, if they can, of for that 20 minutes, 25 minutes, if they're going to do a noisy activity, if they're willing to wait to do it till another time, or um, choosing your Zazen time to be one that won't interfere with other people's activities. But choosing your space is really important. If you think about it, choosing your space is critical because when you're in that space, you're doing Zazen with that space. So this is one of those lines of Fukanzazengi that could be easy to skip over, but is actually very, very essential. Take some time to think about it. Where do you do your Zazen? Do you do it the same place every day? Is it actually a good place for Zazen? Is it quiet enough, free from distractions as much as possible, and one you can return to every day? So I wanted to tell you a little funny story about that first space I selected. He used to have a giant gray cat called Gandalf, who was a tabby Manx, and he had really gorgeous dark and light gray stripes. And he walked like an English bulldog because he was just so big. My wife liked to say that he looked like a man on a mission. And he also had this like tiny, timid voice. His meow was just didn't match his physique. And he had a cute little nub instead of a tail. He was just like a really cool cat in almost every way. However, like most Manx cats, he was prone to digestive issues and sometimes decided to poop in places other than the litter box. So knowing that Gandalf would probably find my Zabuton to be the perfect alternative litter box, I was very careful about always closing the door to my Zendo when I was done with practice for the day. And one day, of course, I forgot to close my door to that Zendo. And sure enough, Gandalf decided to use my Zabuton for his litter box. And luckily, he missed my rakusu, which was sitting on top of my zafu at the time. So from that day, my zendo was named Neko no Unko Zendo, which means cat poop zendo. So if you share your home with pets, make sure to take some precautions so that you don't have to rename your zendo after their biological functioning.